Understanding the past. It's essential for shaping a successful future. Turning points in a nation's progress often coincide with significant scientific and technological advances.
And so you look at our solutions in terms of transportation technology, communications technology, how we produce our food, how we go about developing new scientific knowledge. All those things relate to the unique historical challenges that we faced as a country.
History has shown that science and technology have the power to transform society, enabling us to do more than we have before.
This country has been transformed by science and technology. Henry Seth Taylor's steam buggy, which was the first automobile made in Canada, the Berliner gramophone, and the simplex range. If you look at any of these objects, what you'll see is a whole series of transformations that are embedded in physical form in the object itself. And there's a whole series of stories that we can tell about the history of our country from those objects.
Advances of tomorrow will build on the innovations of the present and the past. That's why preserving a nation's scientific and technological heritage is an important step in educating and inspiring great thinkers and doers of the next generation. Because it's important to protect and share its artifacts, Canada, since 1967, has had a national museum devoted specifically to science and technology.
Museums are in some ways collective memories. And in the case of the Canada Science and Technology Museum, we are the collective memory of Canada in the history of science and technology and innovation in this country.
A nation's ability to innovate can become the key to its wealth and success. In fact, advancing science culture may be the single most important determining factor in economic growth.
We do know from the investments in science and technology that we made in the past that they have had enormous impacts on economic growth in this country. We only have to look at some of the artifacts in the museum's collection to see that. One example that I can point to is CN locomotive number 40, which is the oldest and in fact only remaining mainline steam locomotive in Canada. Railways, of course, in that period were a huge change in how we moved people and goods, and through the construction of railways, enormous bursts in economic activity occurred.
Museums can encourage people to find out more about science and also to become a little bit familiar with it. Many people went through school thinking that they hated physics or mathematics, while in fact maybe it was the way it was taught to them. So by visiting museums and taking part in activities, that's a way that we can show them that science and technology are in fact exciting fields, and they and themselves can get involved in one way or another. For example, after a visit or taking part in a program, someone might decide to read a science magazine or to go to a public lecture. And when we hear stories like that, it's really heartwarming, because then we know that we acted as a bit of an igniter for someone's interest in science and technology.
The Canada Science and Technology Museum is working to educate and inspire the next generation of great scientists, engineers, and innovators while helping the public to better understand the relationship between science and society.
Understanding where we came from helps us understand who we are. And in that respect, museums have a large role to play, not only of this generation, but of generations to come.
There's a real opportunity here for us to do hands-on learning with our children, and it's something that you don't see in a whole lot of public venues. As they get older, we'll have a chance to come back with them and hopefully be a part of their learning process and integrate what they're doing in school with what they get to see here.
Located in Ottawa, this National Museum houses the most comprehensive collection of its kind, including nearly 1 million artifacts, photographs, drawings, and rare books. Integrated into compelling exhibits and experiences, these objects tell the story of the transformative power of science and technology in Canada over the years.
The museum's collection can be divided into about 4 areas. One would be transportation, another would be communications, another would be natural resources and energy, and the last one would be physical sciences and space. So when you think about those 4 broad areas, it really is quite comprehensive. The artifact collection, these are three-dimensional objects, range from the smallest item, which might be a computer chip, to the largest, which would be a fully functioning authentic lighthouse.
In fact, the collection is so extensive that less than 2% of it is currently on display. The museum is always seeking ways to share and to display more of its unique treasures.
The museum is developing traveling exhibitions that will exploit the rich collection and be able to travel across the country and show to Canadians all over the country what their collection is. The museum is also very interested in lending artifacts to other institutions in other parts of the country, so people don't have to come to Ottawa to see the national treasures that the collection contains. The museum is also developing a space called an accessible collection space. That space will give visitors the experience of visiting the reserve collection. One day, the museum will be housed in a purpose-built building where it will be able to show much more of the collection and finally give science, technology, and innovation the place they deserve.
When we found out that there was only 2% of the available material that was actually on display at the museum, we couldn't believe it. We would love to see more.
As you explore the museum's collection, you'll be amazed at how science and technology have shaped and continue to shape practically everything, from communications to transportation, from natural resources to industrial technology, from advanced research to everyday life.
We really enjoy being members of the museum. I would say it's absolutely worth it. There's no better place to bring your children at any age.
Support the preservation and the sharing of Canada's heritage of innovation. Get involved with the Canada Science and Technology Museum so that all Canadians will have access to the collections, the exhibits, and the activities the museum has to offer. For more information, call 866-442-4416 or visit sciencetech.technomuses.ca.